So I recently climbed Mount Kinabalu. I was on a solo 2.5 month mini round the world trip. One of my goals was climb a mountain. I was going to Borneo. I decided it would be Mount Kinabalu. If you're interested in climbing Mount Kinabalu but want to make it a bit more cost efficient, I was able to save over 2,000 ringgits versus an organized tour, and I got pretty much the exact same experience. So in this video, I want to walk you through how you might be able to do the same, my tips and recommendations on how to book this yourself. When I was doing my research, one of the first things I noticed was the main method of climbing is using some of these tour providers. They all seem pretty expensive, especially if you're a solo traveler, you're not a Malaysian citizen. They have a dual pricing structure where Malays and non-Malays will pay different prices. Whilst I was comparing these various packages, most of which are identical to be honest, in terms of itinerary, I ended up stumbling upon the official Sabah Parks booking system. It's not the easiest to find. I didn't feel it was very well advertised, but with a bit of homework I realized there's not a huge difference, right, between booking directly and booking with the tour company, especially since when you're on the climb you must have a guide, you must have a stay in the Penalaban accommodation, you must have the same permits. So if all of those fixed fees are like the same, then why am I paying like such a premium to use one of these tour providers? I'll break out some of the differences in a second. Let's look at the cost, right, and further hopefully incentivize you to book directly and book this yourself. So what I should have paid as a solo climber was about 1,714 ringgits. The same price for a tour was at the time 3,490. The disclaimers here, all of the costs you see are accurate as of 2024 December. We're booking this in the theory that you're a solo international climber and you're doing a 3-day 2-night package. The reason for that, again, I'll touch on later. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against this tour provider. I have nothing against tour packages. I just don't feel it's very good value for money. And if we look at the price changes as well, right, it's going up year on year. In 2025, you're probably looking at over 3,800 ringgits for a solo traveler. So again, it's quite a lot of money. And I just feel like you get much better value for money by doing this yourself. This inflation figure or price change figure in the last 5 years is well above what Malaysia's inflation rate has been. So I don't think it's fair. So those are the costs. All in all, my estimate for what it would cost in 2025 is about 1,910 ringgits. That's a 1,799 ringgit rough saving, right, on the estimated price for 2025 if you're using a package. If you feel that that's worth your time and effort to manage this yourself, then again, it's quite a significant cost saving there. It's almost like 50%, right? Now, if we look at what are the differences, so organized tour versus self-organized. Number one, again, price. You'll probably get it cheaper by doing it yourself. You take on more of the risk of self-organizing. A benefit of the tour providers is you probably have a lot more variety in the dates that you're going to climb. So I think what happens is they bulk buy a lot of the permits. There's only 170, a day, and they can save them. They can give them at special offers, etc. This means that you might be able to find availability with a tour provider that is already sold out on the official booking website, right? Depending on the tour operator, they might have special offers. They might throw in, for example, this one's throwing in a t-shirt. They might have freebies, and they also provide additional support. So look, they've got here, COVID protection. So the terms and conditions will differ depending on if you book direct with Sabah Parks or if you book with a tour provider. Transport is a potentially big cost impact to your trip. If you have a organized tour, you'll have transport included back to KK. And then there's a slight difference in food as well. If you get there the day before and do a 3-day 2-night package, you'll have a meal included, you'll get dinner. The morning of the climb, you'll have a buffet breakfast included, and you'll also get a packed lunch, which is provided to eat halfway up to the Penalaban base camp. Once you're on the climb, everything is the same regardless of if you're solo or using a tour. So the food at the base camp is provided buffet style. It's already included in your accommodation fees. So if you do climb solo, my advice is bring some money, a little bit of cash, bring a card, and then potentially bring some snacks as well for you to eat as your lunch, or just bring a packed lunch. I personally had the buffet breakfast at the Lewagyu restaurant inside the park headquarters. It wasn't that great, about 55 ringgits, I think. But again, a lot of the people on these organized tours were eating in the same restaurant as me. So now the important piece, how do you actually go about self-organizing? Step by step, let's book it. The one issue I had not being a local is that for me this wasn't super clear. Now that I've done it, it is a lot clearer. If you haven't got that experience of having done the hike, you don't really know where to book, what's necessary, what's optional, etc. Step 1 is you want to secure your date to climb. This is the most important thing. Make a booking via Saberpark's official website for your accommodation, saberparks.org.my. This piece is critical, so if you don't have accommodation for the date of your climb, you can't go up. The number of beds in Kinabalu Base Camp is the limit for how many daily climb permits they'll allow, since they don't do a one-day hike anymore. The date of your accommodation is probably going to be the central point around which everything else is booked, right? Transfers, flights, etc. You book through the website and you get confirmation. You go to services, online services, Mount Kinabalu climbing. Mount Kinabalu, open that. Obviously you've got important information that I'm assuming you're going to read and prepare for. Make sure you book the right accommodation. The Lemayang hostel is only for Malay citizens. Penalaban is for international and Malays. I had to book 8 months in advance for my slot in October. It really depends on the time of year and how busy it's going to be, but you do need to book in advance. And then everything you book here will be paid for online. There are some additional fees you need to pay on the actual day of your hike. So step 2, optional but highly recommended, is your pre-climb accommodation. I, along with other tour operators, highly recommend you arrive 1 day before your hike is start so you can rest the night at the park or nearby. The reason for this is it's a 2+ hour bus ride from KK City. So if your flight is delayed or the road has traffic, there's potential you miss the start of the hike on arrival day. There is a cut-off time, so if you don't leave Timpahon Gate by 10:30 a.m, you're no longer allowed to depart for your climb, so you risk losing your booking. Depends on your own risk profile. But I think it's just worth it to get there early, stay for 1 night somewhere cheap. Allows you to wake up fresh, ready for the hike. You're already on site or nearby, and there's no stress over your commute, right? Especially if you've never done it before. Where do I get the bus? What if I'm so late? Blah, blah, blah. Speaking of transport and the bus, transport to the park HQ, step number 3. Once you know when you want to get to the park, you need to get there. So let's book some transport. Option 1 is to arrange a private transfer. You can either get a grab taxi on the day or via some sort of transport operator like a shuttle or a van. The prices I generally see are about 250 ringgits one way. That seems to be like the general standard for pricing for a solo traveler. It's cheaper if you split it with someone else, but there's no guarantee that you're going to find other passengers that want to go at the same time as you. So grab price is obviously going to fluctuate depending on when you want to go. There's no guarantee that depending on your departure time, that drivers will want to go that far, since there might not be a return customer, right? Especially if you're doing this on the same day that you're supposed to hike, right? You're probably going to have to leave at like 5 a.m. or something from KK. So again, are you going to find someone that's going to want to take you there? Who knows? Bit risky, in my opinion. Third option, public bus. I think it's probably the best one. It costs 40 ringgits for a one-way ticket. You get a ticket from KK to Ranau. When you go to board the bus, the driver or the person storing the luggage will note down where you want to stop. So make sure you tell them you're getting off at the park headquarters. If not, you're going to end up going to Ranau, which is, it's too far from where you actually want to get off. I personally got the bus from Inaman bus station, which is the northern KK bus terminal. You can book online via the website easybook.com. I actually ended up going there physically the day before because I wanted to talk to like a human about how to get a return bus, because that part was never really clear to me. I'll touch on that a little bit later. Another option if you want to get a bus or a shuttle is you can potentially go from Merdeka Square. They've got an express bus and taxi terminal. It seems a little bit less organised based on what I've read. That's why I opted for Inaman, despite Merdeka Square being a lot closer. The buses apparently leave when they're full. You turn up at the square, you ask for the bus going to Park HQ or Ranau, and then you pay and wait to depart. Advice is to generally get there early, around 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m, because there might not be buses later in the day. All of that is just relayed from comments I've seen online. I've not gone there myself. Option 5, rent a car, rent a bike. You can go there whenever it's convenient. Of course, this means you still need to find somewhere to park the vehicle for the time you're climbing, so it costs more money either way, right? Because even when you're not using the vehicle, you're going to be renting it. So those are your options to the park. Let's talk specifically about the bus and how you get your return transport. So this is the part that I found a little bit confusing. So when I was reading some blogs, they said taxis will wait outside if you want to return back to KK. I never saw a taxi in like my 2 days there, and when I did try to use Grab to find something, I had no drivers in my area. So at this point, for me, if I wasn't going to use the bus, that was I was being forced into it anyway. There is a transport desk inside the park, so next to where you're going to book your guides, etc. They've got a transport desk. It's 250 ringgits for one person for a one-way transfer back to KK. They're open until 5 p.m. There will be buses going back to KK roughly from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. There's no set schedule. The transport desk said they generally arrive at the top of each hour, but it's not guaranteed. So if they all run, that's 7 buses you can potentially get, depending on how quickly you come down the mountain. There's a bit of a risk with the return bus, especially if you're getting one of the last buses of the day. If they're full or they don't run to schedule, you might be out of luck. Just be aware of that. So if you get injured coming down, or your group takes a lot longer than planned, you might have to catch a later bus, or you might miss the last bus. How do you get the bus without a ticket and with no official bus stop? When you arrive at the park, you get kind of dropped off pretty much near the entrance. This is kind of like a little bus stop shelter thing. If you want to get a return bus back to KK, go and stand on the opposite side of the road. This is a bend here, so it's probably not best to stand down here because they might not see you. Stand probably somewhere up here so you can hail essentially a bus. You just stand by the road, stick your arm out, hope it's going to KK, and that's it. I had no way of knowing if the bus would stop or where it was going until I asked the driver if they were going back to KK. Luckily, the first bus I stopped was going to KK. They had a spare seat, so they let me on. Halfway through the journey, they woke me up, charged me 20 ringgits for the ride back, and then they took me to Inaman station. But that's it for transport. There are other fees, as I mentioned, that you'll pay on the day of the climb. So all of this stuff you pay online, right, when you make your accommodation booking. Guide fee and transport, those are what you'll pay on the day. They took, I think, only cash, and you book this basically at the registration desks before you start climbing. I do recommend that you get there a little bit early, budget 30 minutes, right, prior to your climb start, so that you can like make all your payments, use the bathroom, etc. There might be a queue that you have to wait in, but there are significant cost savings all in all, right, if you do it this way. Hopefully you found this video useful. Before I end it, a couple of other tips. I mentioned that I managed to save again like another 300 or so ringgits. How did I do this? Instead of paying 1700, essentially, this is going to be a flexible cost anyway. So like I chose to stay in like the Rock Twin dorms, which is one of the cheaper ones. You could lower this, you could increase this if you want 5 stars. The main area you can save is probably the guide fee. So I found 2 girls who were self-organizing as well. They're in the line ahead of me, and I just asked while they're registering, like, can I kindly join their group so we can split the costs of the guide? And they said, yeah, sure. You can't join any of the groups that have like an organized tour. So like you wouldn't be able to join, if they had 4 people, you wouldn't be able to join like a Mount Kinabalu organized tour or Amazing Borneo's tour, who's another tour organizer. It has to be like self-organized tours. Transport is technically optional, but I would say we're talking pennies here. Like, I don't think your guide or other participants would be too pleased if you tell them you want to walk to Timpahon Gate. It's quite far. You got plenty of walking that day, so save your energy. Like, I'm all for making a saving, but at the same time, that's different from being just cheap. Note, the transport back from Timpahon Gate to the reception is free of charge. There'll be vans waiting outside after you complete your climb. How do you ensure that you're guaranteed to have a guide? I think I saw somewhere that said like guides are subject to availability. On the day I arrived, there were plenty of guides waiting to be assigned to a climb group, so that wasn't an issue. When I asked the hotel reception the night before, they assured me there'd be sufficient guides. The guide that was actually taking us up, when I spoke to him about it, he said, regardless of his condition, whether he's sick, he's going to climb. So while there's no way to really secure a guide in advance, they know how many permits they've sold for that day, right? They will have a reasonable amount of guides available. Luggage, if you're taking a big bag, you can leave your main luggage at the park headquarters for 15 ringgits per day. This lets you obviously take just a day pack with only your climbing gear. If you're staying inside the park accommodation, you can book a free transfer to park headquarters, the reception, but do it the night before. I forgot to do it, and when I woke up in the morning to ask for a transfer at 7:15 a.m., they said I'd have to wait for 1 hour. Luckily, it was not raining and not too far, but it meant I had to carry all of my luggage to reception so I could register for the climb, drop my bags, etc. Everyone is booking transfers in the morning because everyone wants to, get started. Those are all my tips. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them, and I'll try and get back to you. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy it and good luck on your climb.